Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning, where we are live both on Facebook and on my personal YouTube stream. So I don't check into YouTube all that often, but I figured since we can put it there, hey, I can actually send it to both places. All right.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay, so this morning, um, okay, so we found that I found finally I found a news article about a death in Niagara, but it wasn't the one you were talking about. It was the one Mike was talking about.
Yes. Yeah, there's still nothing about. I checked again yesterday. I talked to a person close to the corner of Barker and Maine.
Yeah.
Or Portage, wherever it's Maine, actually, at that point. And they claim that the police were there, were asking questions, and yet nothing in the news. Others claim they saw the body. And the police were there for a long time. So I don't know what has happened there. I don't know if the press is, if they're holding back information on that for some reason, or if it's just wasn't what they thought it was. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't what they thought it was. You see
But
things.
you get the police, and they got you got these witnesses telling you all that, and
Yeah.
you wonder, oh well.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the 6:20 p.m. on Monday evening, there was a death in a residential in Epworth Circle near St. Lawrence, in a residential area. So basically, they arrived on scene and found a male victim suffering life-threatening injuries. And he was rushed to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Um, is there a kind of, was he really dead on the scene? Sounds like it.
He may have been hanging on, but by the time they got to the hospital where he was pronounced dead, right? So
Yeah.
he may have been dead where they saw him. A few details have been released thus far, but police say their homicide unit is investigating. No arrests have been made, and no suspect information has been provided. So we don't know who is this guy that got murdered. They're not saying anything just yet. On Epworth, it's getting a little bit too close to home. I lived close to there for 26 years. I used to walk by that corner often,
Yeah.
So
it's a case of murders happen elsewhere, Dave, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Although I got to remember there was a murder, suicide, and suicides, and people found dead on the railway tracks. Right, the railway tracks aren't there anymore, but there's a path there now. But I remember that. So over the 26 years I lived there was murders and muggings and suicides and suicides and bodies dumped along the tracks. So it was, but back in those days, it was more of a lower end economic area. A lot of the area in and around there was kind of mixed, middle to low income area, and so you got what would be typically of a less prosperous neighborhood. Basically, the sort of crimes that you would think. The guy across the street from me, Frank Perry, he was murdered. He was a bootlegger and he got murdered, and they haven't solved that crime to this day. And so there was lots of stuff going on down there before, but I haven't heard anything like that since, because all those neighborhoods have been kind of upgraded again. They're nice old houses down there. They could get fixed up and look real good. So I don't know what the problem is, but there's too many too many incidents lately. We've got rape, we've got shootings, we've got stabbings, we've got all of that. And in St. Catharines, it's even worse. I just don't like it. I don't like it
Well,
one bit.
I
And there's
tell you
got to
one
be a way
thing.
to stop.
Yeah, tell you one thing that occurs to me is that we're living through some bad times right now. Right? I think we can agree upon that. And
Yes, bad economic times and
yeah,
unusual social problems.
yeah, and I'm not, okay. So we've got some definitely diverse things going on. Bad economic, social times. Certainly issues with people. People's ability. With the numbers of homeless, which is growing, and even though we talked last week about the numbers of employed being higher than ever before in Ontario, it's a bit of a dichotomy because we've got varying degrees of problems, but yet we've still got high employment, right? Usually, when you've got higher employment, the problems, a lot of the problems fall away, but not so today. We've still got increasing homelessness. So I think it's all contributing to that.
Yes, I think drugs have had an incredible effect because we are living in a very prosperous age. Even though the inflation and the average prosperity's gone down, the housing has affected everybody. But you have to go back to the 30s when people were seriously in bad economic conditions before you get crime like this. And you didn't really get a whole lot. What you did get was a lot of drunks in alleyways and stuff, but you may have got a little more thievery than usual. But when people are, but in this particular case, we have a very vibrant economy and society, and yet we have growing numbers of homeless people, and I pretty much blame drugs for that. And it's
Well,
very sad when somebody has to give up everything they have to get more drugs,
yeah,
and they sell. First of all, they sell everything they got, then they steal from the relatives, then they steal from anyone else to get the money for drugs. And the
right,
rest of society's tried to keep them alive at soup kitchens and other places, but that drugs are the thing that 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 sticks with them, and they lie and they cheat and it changes their mind. It changes
yeah,
who they are. Drug
yeah.
addiction, you become much less moral
Well,
because you have a need.
yeah, let's move on to something that Mike says here. The larger the population, there is more crime. And I think that to some extent that is true because we haven't had recent influx of population that we've had in Niagara Falls hasn't really integrated people within the Falls community. Where people were slowly coming in. They were getting used to what was available in the falls. They were integrated in the community. I felt integrated in the community when I first came here, even though
Well, you're an English guy. I mean, it's not hard to integrate. You know,
well, I didn't come here voluntarily. Let's put it that way. It wasn't my first choice of place to be.
if you went to Australia, it'd be calling you a palmy bastard.
No, when I said no to Niagara, I meant to Niagara Falls wasn't my first choice of place to be. I came here because of, because I could find a cheap place to rent after unfortunate circumstances had occurred, and work went from there. Right. I could have gone to St. Catharines where there were some cheap places to rent as well, but I for whatever reason didn't like what was on offer in St. Catharines. I liked what was on offer in Niagara Falls, and stayed here since. Now, it was bad circumstances that brought me here, right? I'm not, you know,
Well,
you know,
bad. So you chose Niagara. Where does somebody go if they face bad circumstances? Well, let's be Niagara. They could explain the rise in crime rate.
mind you, I was, you know, I found welcome within this community. Whereas I think if you're moving into some of these new neighborhoods we've got here, there's not, you know, there's a lot of people who come from places, you know, faraway places that have got no, you know, built no community in this neighborhood.
Well, that's going to be a problem too. But you're not going to find crime in among the new immigrants coming into the country. You will find it among asylum seekers of that sort. If you have controlled immigration, no matter where it is from the world around the world, you are very unlikely to get crime with that. But you do get
Yeah,
crime among refugees. As you can see in Sweden, their crime rate has skyrocketed in the last 10 or so years, 10 or 15 years. They're a very peaceful nation, and now they get all kinds of crime. Same problems happening in Finland. And these are all among the refugee claimants that came into the country. Our Somali refugees, although the vast majority of them are good people, they're the ones that are running the heroin scam, the heroin drug trade right now. So
yeah,
if you have a rather poor group of people coming in, like when you had the Vietnamese boat people, there was a crime spree going, the crime wave happened in Toronto when they hit Toronto. Now, almost all of them that came in were definitely good people, but there was enough badasses salted in among them that happened, and you see crime rates during the early 20th century, particularly among Irish and Italian and Jewish uh, mass migrants that came to the United States. The vast majority of Irish, Italian, and Jewish immigrants just did their thing, went off and got a job, but because so many of them were stuck in very poor circumstances, it created crime or the necessity of crime. But this is all different because this seems to me that the crime and that was happening in society is happening almost entirely because of drugs. And when you get drugs, you get mental illness. This is not an organized type of crime that's going on in our town. I don't think. Now, I don't know why the person on Epworth was shot dead. I don't know. But hopefully we'll find out sometime later. We've had mob bosses shot dead here in town. I remember I just passed by a house where a friend of mine used to live, and that he rented it from a mob boss who was later shot dead. So there has been murders and stuff like this, but the pervasiveness of the crimes of stabbing, shooting, that kind of things are mostly related to drugs now, and the collapse of society, the amount of homeless people does not equate well enough with the economic situation we have. You can
yeah,
expect some people have it becoming homeless because of economic situations, but not the number that we do have.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So, moving on. Oh, hang on. We got one more comment. Shooting someone in the head is a message. Yeah.
Well, this guy was
Yeah.
shot in the
That's
head.
usually okay. Well, it clearly was from the information that Mike has. Remember, Mike came up with this story before the press did.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as I after the show, I looked at it and it was there. But yeah,
Yeah.
Mike, our roving reporter in the field,
Usually,
metaphysical Mike.
yeah. Usually,
He's
when
not
you've
just a
got
weatherman.
when you've got local people reporting something or telling you something, that's typically, it's typically a portion of that is typically true, right? and typically local people know more than the police do. All right. Okay, let's move on to something else that I know you were hinting at yesterday. A mysterious illness that affected US diplomats in recent years has been linked to a Russian intelligence unit. And basically, there's a new report that has been brought out by US intelligence investigators that have linked this Havana syndrome, and in their assessment of anomalous health incidents that have occurred around the world. And apparently, the first of these wasn't in Havana, but was in Germany. But the so-called Havana syndrome is actually related to the work of a particular Russian intelligence unit.
Yes. Well, look, I looked into this because I don't know, a week or two ago, we ran an article on the Havana syndrome, and there is no explanation for it. So the article says we don't know what it is. There's a number of things, but they were pretty sure that it was no foreign government or agency involved. Now somebody goes on 60 Minutes and it reopens the door right after it was closed. So now all of a sudden, the Havana syndrome comes right back to the top of the list of things to see in the newspaper. This is BBC. They're the ones that fell for it this time. I read another article this morning about it, and it's saying, no, there's nothing to it. So far, they have had 4,500 people all over the world in 96 different countries, 1,500 cases of U.S., but it's not just U.S., apparently Canadian also, and other, but they don't go into that. I don't know why. They focused on the U.S. 1,500 cases, 96 different countries. They're calling this clickbait, basically. Most U.S. officials say it's unlikely there's a foreign adversary involved in here. Now, that's what we heard last week. Suddenly, somebody comes on 60 Minutes, says it's a Russian special group that is doing this, using sonic weapons against the U.S. Embassy staff and other places. And then you have the government coming out and says, no, there's nothing to that.
Yeah. But that use of sonic weapons has long been the suspicion of certain people and has been part, I guess, of, let's call it a conspiracy theory.
Well, the U.S. was very quick to accuse the Cubans of attacking their brand new embassy in Havana. That's why the name is Havana syndrome, because that's where it first came out. And the U.S. jumped all over the Cubans, saying, "Look, you're attacking our people with," and that at that time they didn't know whether it was sonic or whatever, some kind of insidious sort of, ray gun or something. But it wasn't. They couldn't really, and of course the Cubans, right, were just kind of in complete denial, but they should have been, because they didn't really have the technology or anything else like that to be able to do anything like that. And the U.S. should have known that. They should have been able to compare what was happening to them to the development of their own sonic weapons. Because if they suspect sonic weapons, that means they have them. They're not going to be. They're going to be doing all that kind of development. And that's probably why they accused them of sonic weapons in the first place, because it may have resembled what happened when they tested their own.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know about the term sonic weapon, unless you've developed some.
Yes, and it's been a seesaw battle ever since. Like, is it or isn't it? Isn't or isn't it? So it's pretty much been sort of dismissed, and it's still pretty much of a mystery, because they have tested these people over and over again. And this BBC article is very typical of what the other article I read said. It says these are clickbaits because the people who write these articles on Havana syndrome, in this case the BBC, are political writers, and politics and things like this is real good clickbait. Havana syndrome, illness, mystery illness to Russian intelligence unit. That's a lot. That's very intriguing, but it's not a medical journal. It's not medical journalists. It's none of them. And
So
if you do
essentially,
put a headline, medical journalist studying the the unusual so-called Havana syndrome, who's going to read that? But the
yeah,
Russian
people like,
secret 29155 or whatever it is unit, they got the unit number here somewhere.
yeah, I've got the unit number there somewhere. I can't. 29155 unit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 29155 unit. Oh, they're evil. We didn't hear about them before, but now we do. So
I thought that was a typo at first, and I read it and reread it.
you see, it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It's fascinating. It's even James Bondian.
Yeah.
But evil Russian unit.
Hey, is there
chaos
a
and
new
rush,
Bond movie
whatever
coming?
else.
Is there a new Bond movie coming out?
Possibly. Possibly.
Yeah, but
I think they were going to make him. I thought they were going to make him black this time. Idris Elba was up for Bond. If it is, I'll go for sure because I love Idris Elba. He's a great actor.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We shall see. All right. Anyway, so yeah. So the essentially what you're basically saying is the BBC wrote a clickbait article that you clicked on.
Yes. Yeah. And basically the other article, I forget what I'll have to look it up. I thought I left it on my screen, but I didn't. And I read it just this morning as a kind of a check. So I went to look, and it pretty much said, no, there isn't really much here. That's like 2 weeks ago we read an article on Havana syndrome, and it pretty much came up. It's still a mystery. We don't know much about it, and it pretty much washed away all kinds of sinisterness. And then this happens, and it all ignites all over again. But in the meantime, cooler heads that are writing about it, nothing's really changed. Nothing's changed. We still know most officials in the United States, unlikely foreign adversary. Political, not medical. It's journalists are political, not medical. Looking for clickbait, obviously. What is true, 1,500 cases in 96 different countries. So that's pretty hard for any Secret Service to go run around 96 different countries hauling their sonic weapons. Where they'd probably be detected pretty easily somewhere along the line. And I'm thinking myself as possible social contagion. It says in the last article I read, you are more likely to get, if you're worried about getting this, you're more likely to get a case of mass hysteria. And they have hinted all along that a lot of this may be psychosomatic. Whoever got the illnesses or conditions first may have run through the groups psychosomatically, mentally. Psychosomatic illnesses happen because of stress and things going on in the mind, and they are presented physically a lot of times, like tinnitus. Tinnitus is one of the main things. Dizziness. In fact, if you look at it, a lot of the stuff here is the same as COVID. So a lot of the symptoms are long COVID symptoms, were COVID and COVID symptoms. A loss of concentration ability, nausea, a little bit, dizziness, tinnitus, sort of anxiety. There's you could put it to anything. The fact is, though, that there really isn't much to this right now. If it is a sonic weapon of some kind, and the United States officials have pretty much dismissed that at this particular time, and they would know because they have their own sonic weapons. I wouldn't put too much into it yet, but unfortunately, we have that kind of clickbait around. We have the same problem. We have almost all of our journalists are political journalists, and it's pretty hard to find medical science journalists that anybody will read. Because if you do go look for medical science journalists, they're not making the headlines because the newspaper or the media or whoever is running it, he wants your attention because they're selling time or whatever else. So that's always a filter that we have to use when we're judging our news sources.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Al Jazeera is basically is reporting that the Italian Parliament passed a law saying that paves the way for Al Jazeera closure in Israel, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to act immediately and stop Al Jazeera's operations in the country.
Al Jazeera is not a popular. The reason why I like Al Jazeera is it is not a popular news agency. It is like what BBC used to be. Actually, BBC has different countries have tried to run them out of town too, but they're much more powerful, so they get to stay. The thing I like about Al Jazeera, Netanyahu has they've come up with a bill where they can throw out any news agency they want. They have restricted free speech in Israel with this bill, and Al Jazeera is the first one to go. Al Jazeera has been working tirelessly in Gaza and Lebanon and all the Middle East. That's their specialty. And they bring the view of the victims usually to the world. The Israeli government cannot control them. The American government can't control them. But the American government is a little bit worried about this. It is concerning, they call it. Now, the reason why I like Al Jazeera is because nobody likes them. Remember back in 2017, 2018, Qatar is where Al Jazeera comes from, but Egypt, the United Arab Republic, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain were all angry at Qatar. They even embargoed it. They put it under siege. They demanded that Al Jazeera be limited and censored. That's the Arab countries. They don't like Al Jazeera even more than Israel doesn't like them because they tell more truths than their own state-run or manipulated media.
When Al Jazeera first came out, there was accusations that they were the mouthpiece of Osama bin Laden, which never proved to be the case. Nobody could ever, it was easy to make such an allegation, but a lot harder to prove such allegations, right?
They are a very good news source, but like all news sources, they have to be very careful. Yeah. Like they come out of Qatar. Well, you wouldn't going to hear Al Jazeera talk about how when the Qataris built the big stadium for the World Cup, the working conditions of the people that were working there and slave-like conditions that Al Jazeera wasn't going to be reporting on that because it embarrassed the government, and it is not a freely run democracy. But for the most part, they let Al Jazeera have a free hand. And in the Middle East, and that's why Saudi Arabia hates them because they have no control over them. Egypt has held at different times at least two different Al Jazeera journalists for a very long time. Rest of them for no particular reason, without much. And of course, Shireen Ali Ahmad was the Christian Palestinian that was shot by the Israelis. She also was an American. And so Al Jazeera and of course I think one of the son, I think, of one of the Al Jazeera wheels was killed in Gaza with his family when he was reporting. So the idea that there are being more journalists than ever before killed in any war in Gaza tells you that, a lot of that's not by accident. And if they
Well,
can't stop Al Jazeera, they'll restrict them.
Yeah, especially with this new law coming along. And yeah, I know that the law isn't just talking about Al Jazeera, but Al Jazeera is essentially Al Jazeera has been the thorn in Israel's side, and they've been wanting to, silence them for quite some time.
You won't have that happen in the United States. The closest the Al Jazeera had a coming of getting run out of town in the U.S. is when they developed the documentary on AIPAC, the Israeli lobby. They had some very influential senators try to work and getting them out of the U.S. So they had to sit on that documentary. It was going to be too upsetting, and they didn't want to do that. So even they don't have complete freedom. Mike says, imagine if we had a news source that told the truth. All ours are owned by the same people, which means censorship to the max. Yeah, they definitely push the news where they want to go. A lot of people make a lot of money off it, like the Murdochs. I mean, those guys are geniuses. They news entertainment at its very finest. Get people as agitated as possible over nothing. That's their forte. Look what kind of money they're making. Huge. Anyway, this law is not a good law. It is very concerning to the Western governments, and the United States has said so, that it is concerning to us when you limit free press in a supposedly free country. Now, Israel is very free for Jewish people or Israelis, even Palestinian Israelis, but it's very, very, very free country inside Israel proper, but it is not in the occupied states. It is an oppressive overlord, and it is a prison keeper for Gaza. So there's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of things that are I don't know, sort of odd about Israel overall. But if it's a democracy and it limits free speech, then it is very concerning, because this is the first step. It could limit a lot of different free speech and a lot of different media outlets. Good luck with the internet. I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of luck, but right now it doesn't look good. But
yeah,
I mean, Modi in India is having pretty good success in controlling the media there. That's another one we have to be really concerned about as well. The free press in India seems to be in jeopardy as well.
Yeah. Well, and the issue here is that the first thing that's really happening here is that Al Jazeera, essentially all the reporters are going to be kicked out of Israel and Gaza and the West Bank.
I don't think they can do Gaza and West Bank. They can kick them out or let them not allow them to report in Israel or any of the reports to come into Israel.
Well,
look,
basically,
Netanyahu is in a pretty rough shape right now. Let's say he's extremely unpopular. He's had to make deals with the devil. Obviously, he's got these super right-wing fanatics in his own political party. They're in the cabinet. They've called for the complete annihilation of the Palestinians. They've talked about settlements in Gaza. They've said all kinds of nasty things, and Netanyahu can't control them. He says, well, the buck stops with me. They can say anything they want, but obviously not. And he's and right now and Mike says Israel's committing genocide. Well, it sure looks that way, doesn't it? Look what they did. They just killed the kitchen people, the World Kitchen people. They killed 7 of them, and it took 3 shots at 3 different vehicles to kill them all. on a route that was mapped out for that group that told the IDF where we are going. We're going here along this way. This is supposed to be a safe way. Here we are. Don't forget, we are the ones that are bringing food from here to there. Okay, we've figured it out. So that they get into 3 different cars, spaces between them, and Israel kills them all.
Yep.
After they checked with Israel and 3 different missiles, not just one accidental one, 3 different direct hits.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
There is an element of genocide here for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
they did not want the people being fed.
History is going to analyze this further than we, than we can live.
Well, one thing Israel does not want to do is also Israel has restricted all foreign journalists from coming into Gaza. It won't let them into Gaza. If you get into Gaza, you could maybe sneak into Gaza, but you don't see BBC there. You don't see CNBC. You don't see any news agency, Der Spiegel, anyone in there. Why? Or CBC or whoever else. And why is that? Because Israel won't let them in. And that because they don't want the reports that are going to come out. You know, I mean, they can't stop the reports when they murder a bunch of people trying to give food to the poor. And, from the very beginning, they wanted to put a noose around Gaza and choke off all supplies of water and food. And they said so right at the beginning. And then they had to say, well, we're not going to do that anymore, but kept doing it anyway and have resisted over and over again, truckloads of food going into there, whereas the United States has had to fly in food and build a special harbor because it cannot get its allies to open up enough border areas to let food in. And you cannot draw another conclusion other than they're trying to starve as many people as they possibly can.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the world's journalists, 50 news agencies around the world wrote a letter demanding access to Gaza. Because if you're going to be a democratic country, if you're going to be sort of a Western country in the Middle East, you have to act like one. That means open up your border to journalists, whether you like it or not.
Oh, yeah. Whether you like what they say or not.
I think they learned this lesson from the Americans, actually. You remember the Iraq War, the First and Second War? They really restricted the amount of journalists that could go there. I
remember the one in Britain where of course, when they went to the Falkland Islands and that Falkland Islands War, the journalists were all on one aircraft carrier. And I remember this particular thing that a journalist said. He said, I counted 25 planes off and I counted 25 planes back. Right? What the journalist was speaking the truth. What the journalist didn't tell you was that, there were 50 planes left from this carrier and the other carrier. But when a plane or two were shot down from this carrier, they were substituted by planes off the other carrier.
Yeah, because they had the journalists there.
When you counted them back onto carrier A, I don't know.
Still had 25.
There were always the same number took off as landed because they were open in the public eye. And the truth of the matter was that were planes being shot down, but the shot down planes, irrespective of where they came from, were always substituted. Same basic thing. You can manipulate the truth for so long, but only for so long.
Well, I was in London when the Sheffield got hit. I remember that. I remember walking out of a play. I went to see a play at night. It was a kind of a rainy night, and the pavement was kind of shining from the rain, from the street lights on it. The guy comes running down the street yelling about the Sheffield getting hit, and there's over 200 guys got killed on that one. And that was
Yeah.
the naval ship that had a aluminum superstructure, and it got hit by a French Exocet missile that the French had sold the Argentinians. And they're not going to build ships with aluminum anymore. Let's put it that way. So does the new liberal hate speech open the door to restrictions of free speech in Canada? .ca. That's an interesting one. I think we probably pick that up tomorrow. There is the hate speech in Scotland. I know about that one, and the restrictions, the hate speech restrictions in Canada, which we've talked about, but haven't really got into too much. I'm not so sure. I don't like any kind of censorship, basically. As much as I hate what happens when you have no censorship, I still feel they shouldn't have any censorship at all, basically. Now the Scottish hate speech thing.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to that. But that's a good point, Karen. We'll maybe pick that up tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. I got one more thing for today. Well, at least one I want to cover today. A Mississauga company, Search Forest Systems Limited, is a company that basically operated the Canadian School Bank Book Exchange and Book Power, has filed for bankruptcy. And what they basically do is they buy and sell books between primarily schools, but other organizations as well, textbooks and the like. So when your school is finished with them, it sells it onto my school, and my school can then put them up in the libraries, etc., or give them out to the kids. Now the problem lies is that the company has approximately 13,500 consignment creditors that still owe $3 million, including individuals, schools, and organizations across Canada. Basically, they're owed a lot of money and nobody's paying the bills.
Well, when did you put that out there?
I put this up there a couple of days ago, right? Actually, it was published March 5th, but I only found out about it a few days ago. The thing was, the reason I was looking at this, well, actually, it said anyone wishing to recoup money must file a proof of claim by March 25th, right?
When did you load up the article?
I only loaded up the article. It came to my attention a couple of days ago. I didn't realize it was an older article. But my concern about this is basically it's the impact upon children and education that I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
and
so
sourcing.
I haven't read it. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to mostly take this one yourself because I haven't read it.
It was more my concern that we were, this basically sounded like a good proposition that it's a school book exchange program that is obviously run by a profit making organization. But if nobody's paying the bills, obviously a for-profit organization is not going to continue, are they?
No.
And that's always a problem, right? So if you've got kids at school or whatever and they're not getting school books, is one of the possibilities why.
Right? Yeah, if they're claiming bankruptcy and they are they actually I'd be a little happier if they're claiming bankruptcy protection because they have $3 million still owed, but it doesn't tell you how much they do owe. So if they do get the $3 million, will it cover their expenses? Will they be able to?
That is a good question in relation to that.
So you see, if they've got $3 million yet to come in that people haven't paid them for, you would think they would call for bankruptcy protection so that they could have time to recoup some of those losses and maybe
You would think so, wouldn't
carry
you?
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You would think so. All right. No, I just raised it because it was of concern to, it potentially concern to local schools.
yeah, I'm really not too happy with the government people and schools and stuff. They don't seem to have real world experience, and
Yeah,
I don't. That's
yeah,
why we have so much
and
disorganization.
the trouble is, a lot of these people they take so long paying their bills. All right. Schools take so long paying their bills. I wouldn't work for a school. I wouldn't do any business with the school, because if I put in my bill tomorrow, I'd be lucky if I get paid next year.
Well, you have to take that into an account.
Yeah.
Some agencies, so whoever you're dealing with, some days they used to have the 90-day thing that you didn't have to pay your like when you got something from let's say a big company like I work for Westinghouse. They were famous for being a
Yeah.
few days late after the 90 days. So they would wait. You're supposed to pay your bill after 90 days. You had up to 90 days to pay it. They would always take 92, 93 days. And it was irritating to their suppliers. They get a couple extra days to make a couple extra bucks on interest. And in this particular company, it says it is only claimed $81,000 in assets and $3.1 million in liabilities. So
Yeah.
if it has an asset of 81,000 and it recoups its 3.1 million in liabilities that it is owed, it can still get up and go again. But the problem is, it really doesn't get into the ranking of the creditor claims and expectations of funds and all of that, and the bank of the bankrupt company. So there is something here. Individual claims currently range from just a few dollars to more than 1.5 million. So there's more complication here than we think.
Sure.
There's going to be people. Number one, the creditors get their money first. The banks get theirs first, and then the people. I think people owed wages, and that would come next.
Yeah, and typically companies that file for bankruptcy protection rarely come out of that in glowing terms.
Well, I worked for an outfit that was that went bankrupt in 1976. They owed me $300, and I saw that $300 in 1984.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Today, we happily tape our next episode of Seniors News and Views. No restrictions there. Oh, okay, Karen. No censorship on Karen's show. No way.
All right, let's move on. Environment Canada
Seniors gone wild.
has been inundated with media with calls about weather predictions for the April 8th solar eclipse. We are now 5 days away. Yes.
Yeah, I guess. The last time I looked, Sunday looked good for long period predictions. Sunday looked good. Monday didn't look half bad. It was a combination of clouds and sun. I don't know. That's going to change day by day because
at the moment, the prediction for Monday is cloudy and sunny.
Yeah, cloudy and sunny for the moment. If we get if the weather shifts, like Sunday is supposed to be very sunny. So if we could kind of switch those days, Monday and Sunday, that would be great. It might not be as bad as what normally, because I looked up what was normal in April, and I saw the cloud cover stuff, and it didn't really look that. It sort of looked half and half, just like it predicts in the typical cloud cover for that day. April is more overcast than it is sunny overall, particularly in early April. So we have
Okay.
some. We're going to have to get lucky. We're going to have to Mother Nature, fickle Mother Nature, is going to have to love us that day. I hope she does. But if anyone bugs her or annoys her, look out, clouds and
Yeah.
rain. You
Well,
know what's
basically, they're talking about a high of 13 degrees, considerable cloudiness, right? Winds east northeast 10 to 15 kilometers an hour during the day, and which is primarily what we're talking about here.
So tie your
Whereas,
glasses on.
pardon
Tie your
me?
glasses on. You could take your glasses off, by the way, and I hesitate a little bit of this. When they at the ultimate point where the sun is completely covered by the moon, you could take your glasses off for that time. When I
No,
watched the
you
annular
can't.
eclipse of the
No,
sun
you
some
can't.
years ago, you could never take them off. Right?
You cannot take your glasses off at the time when the moon entirely covers, because that is precisely the time when the bright corona occurs. That's precisely the time you should not take your glasses off.
No, I disagree with you there. So we'll settle this tomorrow. I think you're allowed to take them off for the minute or two, whatever it is that is completely covered. Before and after that, no. That's what I was. That's what's
Not
been on
not according
PBS
to
of late. So
no, not according to um, well, not according to the sources that I relied upon at the last eclipse I was at. They
well,
basically said, "Don't this is the most important time because what you get is the glare off of the sun that often shines up like a wedding ring."
what the current science is, apparently, according to PBS, that they've had a lot of warnings about what you can and cannot do. And it's not just PBS; it's other stations around too. What you can and
Yeah.
cannot do. And the thing is, you have to have certified glasses. You look at the eclipse, and you don't take them off. You don't even think of taking them off until it's completely covered. At that point, you take them off for a minute or two, and then you got to throw them right back on again. And so that's what they've said in their safety lectures to everyone. Get those glasses. Make sure they're approved safety glasses. Do not use sunglasses or anything like that. I remember when we had the eclipse when I was a kid, when I was in grade four, we had an eclipse. And my teacher said she wore 6 pairs of sunglasses.
I don't know that I had we had an eclipse when I was we were in school, and we were taken out to see it, but we were basically shown the eclipse through like this sheet of eclipse type plastic. So
Yeah.
we were told not to look up. The teacher held this sheet of plastic here, and you were told not to look up. Just look through the plastic.
Yeah. We did similar thing too when we were in school. We could watch it on TV. You could look outside, but you couldn't look at the sun, so you could see it getting darker all the time.
Yeah.
But since that time, I've watched the annular eclipse of the sun with welding shield. Now, because the sun never gets completely covered in an annular eclipse, there's a ring of light all the way around because the moon is not close enough to Earth at that time to be able to obscure the sun completely. It's one of those things. You can get an annular eclipse or a total eclipse, but the annular eclipse are as rare as a total eclipse, maybe even rarer. So I went up to Queenston Heights with my family in the 90s, and I had a welding shield. As a matter of fact, I put a couple of number 10 welding. I probably only needed number 1, but I put two number 10 glasses in the shield and looked up. I could see it perfectly. It was awesome. I could see exactly it happening. Whatever. let the kids have
Well,
a look too.
99 when I watched the total eclipse in France, I have to say the most stunning thing that I noted about this was in the middle of the countryside, and the most stunning thing I noted about that was how once the first crack of the moon over the sun, so here's the surface of the sun as the moon cracked over the sun, right? From that point on, for a couple of hours, there was almost silence. No animals, no crickets, no movement of animals at all. There was deadly silence in and around there.
Oh, that case, the eclipse should happen in the Ukraine or Gaza. If everything goes silent when that happens, it's a quick time to go in and pull everyone's weapons off of them while they looking up in the air or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So the animals think, of course, that they do what they do at night, and the nocturnal animals don't have enough time to come out of their burrows. It's only like so long, but the diurnal animals, oh, wait a minute, it's dark. Should we be sleeping? Should we be what should we be doing? And then the light comes back on. Oh, back in.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Christopher Columbus used the eclipse. I got this book by Christopher Columbus that by Christopher Columbus student or researcher. Christopher Columbus, she claims, isn't nearly as bad as history makes him out to be. And so I got the book and I started reading it a few weeks ago. And one of the things he did was he used the total eclipse. He used an eclipse. He knew eclipse was happening when he was in the Caribbean. And the natives were uncooperative to him because he needed supplies, he needed food and supplies. So he told them he's going to take the sun away if they didn't, because he knew eclipse was happening. So that's what he did. He claimed that, and it worked for him. Like it really did. It worked for him. The natives got all excited and were able to hand over food and stuff like that. And they were grateful that he brought the sun back, his powerful Christian God. But but that wouldn't have worked anywhere else in the world at that time, because the Sumerians from 2500 BC could predict eclipses.
Well, and it wouldn't have worked, on any other day.
Well, obviously it's got to be eclipse day, Peter. You can't say, "Well, I'm going to hope it's eclipse today."
Any other day, yeah. But yeah, you're right that we know when these things are occurring. We know the path of them, and we've known the path of them for many, many years. And certainly Columbus would have known that, right?
Well, of course, because they knew, like, the Western civilization had known the. I wouldn't doubt very much that the Mayans and the Aztecs would have known about the eclipses as well, because they were advanced astronomically. But when you got natives out in the two different groups, the Caribs and the Arawaks, I think they were, in the Caribbean, they wouldn't have had that kind of sophistication. But I bet you the Mayans and the Aztecs did, and the Incas as well.
Yeah, more than likely, yeah. Okay, all right. So, wishing everybody well for Eclipse Day, and remember, we're in totality zone, so we have to go nowhere. But there's likely 250,000 cars coming here.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to put a big sign on the highway, "Eclipse this way," and send them to Thorold.
I was going to say, put a sign on the highway and send them down the 403.
or send them to Welland. That'd be even better.
Well, Welland's in totality.
Yeah, it is in totality. So hopefully a lot of those GTA people will just sort of just drive right into the canal, so that they stop coming down here and buying houses.
Wishful thinking there, Dave. All right, I think our time is up.
Okay, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace, everyone.
Yeah. All right.